Okay, good evening to everybody. Appreciate you being here this evening. This is our budget hearing for the 2021-22 budget proposal. What you're going to be seeing tonight is a little bit different than what you saw at our last board meeting. We were able to close our budget gaps that we had and actually have a good budget to present to you this evening. So I'll go through as quickly as I can because I know many of you have already listened to what we had to say last time. So I'll try to go through that pretty quickly and then get to the new stuff. But just as a reminder, this budget helps us to live within the new normal. We will continue to adjust staffing to enrollment. We're going to work within the tax cap, and we're also going to try to adjust some existing resources to support both our current and our future needs. And then lastly, we have to be able to manage the impacts and costs of COVID-19. So to the extent possible, we're maintaining all of our existing programs. And right now, our district goals are safety, obviously, the science of reading, which I had mentioned previously, and then special education support, which you're going to see, I think, in a positive way in a few minutes. We're going to show you a slide that I think you're going to find to be a positive from when we first started our special education journey when I got here. And then technology integration and infrastructure. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight on the regular budget side, and we're going to talk about the rest of it in the smart bond side. So as all of you know, some of our challenges and responses so far, one of our bigger challenges has been to try to manage the COVID-19 costs. At a prior meeting, we showed you how much money we spent last year and how much money we're spending this year on COVID-19 costs. We're doing okay, but we wanted to make sure that we kept good track of those. We also are in a better position now of knowing what our state and federal aid are going to be, which is why we were able to work on closing this budget gap. The last meeting, we were still talking about the election fallout. We were still talking about any kind of stimulus bill being passed and all of that. And as of today, we know the outcome of the election. We know the outcome of the stimulus package and what impact that's going to have on the states, which in turn has positive impact on the schools. And then lastly, we'll talk to you a little bit about the tax cap. There's a tiny change in the tax cap, which will explain why that is. This next slide number 5, I would pull it out and put it on your refrigerator. Keep it in your car if you're at Wegmans, if you go to the store, Aldi's, wherever, because there's a couple of things that we were able to achieve in slide number 5 that we've been working on now for a few years. First of all, I'd like you to look at the instruction line, and you see there's a difference of 172,000. Yet at the same time, we've negotiated one of our larger contracts, and we have a couple more to go this year. And you see a decrease in instruction of 1.01%. One of the things that we presented to you during our last meeting was when we had negotiations, we were able to provide teachers with a greater raise in return for moving to a different health plan. And the impact of moving to a different health plan, the high deductible health plan, is shown on the instruction line, where you see, even though we gave raises, you see we have a decrease of 1.01%. The second reason why there's a decrease there of 1.01% is, if you remember, when I first got hired, we talked about really revamping special education and taking a look at how do we bring students back to campus, and if there are students that are on campus that really would benefit from being outside of campus, how do we start to make that transition happen? And over the past 2 years, we've been able to make a pretty significant swing, and that has led to overall savings, which you're also seeing in that instruction line. So that's why. So we actually met 2 of our goals, and now we're seeing that in the data of the budget. Also in transportation, you're seeing that as a reduction of 2.44%. We have had some retirements in that area, and we'll have some more retirements probably coming up. So we were able to capture some breakage there, which allowed us to have that reduction to transportation expense. Community service is something that Zoe and I talked about. We feel it's something that we need to add to a budget line and have it be its own thing, because one of the other goals that we had promised was once we had the second floor up and going, we said we were going to open that space to the community, and we were going to we called it the little Y in the cornfield, I think is what we called it at one time. And that's going to cost some money to staff that if we have it open in the evenings for our community members. And that's why we have a line item there that we've established at $12,000 under community services for that. And then lastly, you also see a benefit under the benefits code. There's a 1.76% increase, even though health insurance went up 10%. That again is meeting our goal of through contract negotiations. That's the other area where you're going to see the impact of the high deductible healthcare plan switch. Okay, so you'll continue to see that over the next couple of years as we fully implement, and that gives us a budget to budget increase of 2.61%. And just if you're a visual learner, on the next slide, it kind of shows you in a visual way, more visual way, where our money is going in terms of expenditures. And I credit Zoe because we couldn't figure out how to fit community service in there at 0.03% because the piece of pie was so small. But then she was the smart one and made it a huge number, and in order to make it show, and then put the smaller number in there, and then it went down to the slice of pie that it was. So I give Zoe 100% credit for that. As I mentioned to you before in our last presentation, we're looking at a capital outlay project for the first time, and we felt it was an important thing for us to do in order to have this budget help generate some money for future budgets. And if you recall, I had mentioned capital outlay project, you're allowed to do improvement projects of up to $100,000. And in the board meeting tonight, that's why you're going to see a request to approve the seeker process, because with any project that we have, it's going to go through state ed, you have to have a seeker process that goes through. So what we've planned for scope out of this particular project is the replacement of a chiller, or you might be familiar with a cooler unit or a chiller that's over the FLSS building right now, and then also attending to some masonry work that didn't get done in this current project. You'll notice that it generates building aid. So for every $100,000 we spend, we're going to get $71,800 back. So that's why capital outlay projects, I think, are smart investments for school districts, especially when you want your budget to try to generate some money. We'll have lists for the future for $100,000 projects, and what those will do, those will actually come off of the larger capital projects that we'll be looking at to replace some of the debt that's on the books when that time comes. State aid, I appreciate Zoe. You know, I've mentioned a bunch of times that she comes from one way of budgeting, I come from another, but it's all numbers in the end. So she and I have worked together over the past couple of years to find the quote language that she and I are both comfortable with. And this is a slide that you're probably going to see a little more often on how we're going to be showing you where our state aid is coming from and kind of how it works. Not much different here to present to you than we did last time. Just wanted you to see that we're budgeting incredibly conservatively, and we are anticipating about a $456,000 increase in state aid. If you were to look straight at the state aid forms, and if you kind of weren't paying attention and just jammed it into the computer, that could be $1 million or more that you put in there. And I just don't think that, in order to Zoe, we just don't think that that's accurate. So we're kind of trying to under promise and over deliver, but still balancing the budget. So if we end up getting more than 456,000, then that's great. It'll just help us for future years. But we wanted to make sure we were putting in what we felt was an accurate number for state aid. Here's also a different way to kind of take a look at it. You see the state aid increase. We're trying to keep our fund balance and reserves at reasonable amounts, knowing that we will be able to replenish them by underspending the budget year to year, hopefully, and then overestimating revenues, the money coming in. So at the end of every year, we have fund balance is the goal. And so far, we've been able to accomplish that. So what happens is, and I wish I had a better slide for this. I said to Zoe today, I gotta be smarter and create this thing. But like when I'm teaching a class, I always say there's the money that you have to spend, and I always put my hand up like this. I'm like, there's always the money that you have to spend, and then there's the money that you're going to take in. And unfortunately, unlike the federal government, schools have to balance their budgets. So that difference between my one hand and my other to make it whole is where the tax levy comes in. Okay, and so what we have, our expenditures to revenues are at 390, a deficit of, or gap of $393,865. That just means this. That just means what we know we're going to bring in versus what we think we're going to spend. Does not have to do with the tax levy. So what would $393,865 look like as a tax levy? Well, it would look like 2.57%, which is on slide 11. What you'll notice if you are checking your notes from the last meeting, that was 2.37 last time. We had to make a slight edit in the tax cap formula, the thing that you love, because we wanted to be able to include the capital outlay. Because when you have a capital outlay project, that pushes your tax levy up, just so your tax cap, I should say, up just a tiny bit. So we're at 2.57% to close that $393,000 gap. And talking with our neighboring schools, not that it matters, but people sometimes like to know, where are we compared to our neighbors? We're right in that wheelhouse or environment. So it's all going to look about the same when budgets kind of go out. So in the news and all that. But the part about this budget that I think is important to mention too, because of negotiations and because of some of the projects that we're doing, it does help us to look out to 2023-24. So instead of putting out one dumpster fire to go to another one, we've actually got a plan that we've been using, and it's been going well, knock on wood or fake wood, and we'll look to continue that. This is the fun and exciting tax cap formula. If you want to stay after tonight, I can give you another 30 minutes about it. I know I can see Sue's shaking her head. Yes, I can't wait. So anyway, you notice this slide here, we have a balance between revenues and expenditures, and that's a good thing. It means we did our jobs and presenting things as we go forward. So I wanted you to, again, to see on slide 14, the analysis of the tax cap, because I think it's important for community members to know that we don't tax them to the max every single year. And you'll notice what we're projecting is, and it's $81 below the tax cap, but we're still not going above the tax cap. And if anybody were to ask, hey, in the past 5 years, we didn't take $283,000 in taxes that we probably could have, that other schools do to pad their fund balances higher than the allowed 4%. So we don't do that, which is why our audits always look good. So on slide 15, what we're estimating, if you look in the middle, it's a true tax rate per $100,000. We're estimating that, hang on a second, I got two screens open. We're estimating that based on 2020 property assessments, a tax rate of $13.26. You've heard me say the spiel enough. We under-promise and over-deliver. We will always give you the worst case scenario tax rate. And then when tax bills are printed in August, that number is always less than that. So if you look down below, if nothing were to change, that $13.26 would turn into a $33 increase on a home valued at $100,000. Now, what we know from our own experience is that it will be less than that. So my guess is it's going to be 0 or less by the time it's done. It's going to depend on the assessed values, which we don't have yet, and it'll depend on equalization rates, and then any changes to state aid if state aid were to go up. So it should be what since I've been here anyway, it should be what our community is used to seeing. No roller coaster ride, solid budget. So this last slide, 16, budget itself has an increase of 2.61%. The money that we're bringing in, 2.64%, resulting in tax levy of 2.57%. When you are at the vote, we'll be asking voters, as you know, to vote on the expenditure side of the budget. So that's what I just presented. The next piece would be about school buses. We're looking to trade in, I think it's 6 buses off the top of my head. Yeah, so we're going to trade in 6 buses. We're looking to buy 5. I think it's important to community members, if you're ever asked a question, the average mileage of a bus when we replace it is about 160,000 miles on these roads, okay? And they take a beating on these roads. Our transportation aid is 65%. Whenever I teach a school business class, I always take students through an exercise of what's the sweet spot of how many buses or vehicles you can buy based on getting your money back over 5 years, based on getting your aid back. And for us, that magic number for next year happens to be 5 is what we're purchasing. So we have some funding options at the bottom right, capital reserve for bus purchases, 160,000 and or our current year fund balance and or finance of a portion. We're going to be in very good shape if things continue to go the way they are. Probably to use current year fund balance, I would say, and that would probably be my recommendation. The only time I might say let's use the capital reserve for 160. It is the last year of that particular reserve, so we might do that and then try to refund it. When I say refund, not give it back. Refund meaning put money in it again. But we're in a good spot for our transportation fleet right now. Some important dates. The adoption of this budget is April 12th. Be there or be square. May 10th is the official budget hearing at 6 p.m. where you get to hear this exciting, riveting presentation one more time. And then May 18th, the budget vote is noon to 8. We don't know where, we don't know how, we don't know anything yet. We would guess that I'm guessing we're probably going to be able to do some in-person voting this time, but I'm also suspecting that they might allow people to vote by absentee again, would be my guess, but we'll see. I don't know. There are 3 seats on the Board of Education, each for 3-year terms, beginning July 1st and ending July 30th, 2024. The seats are currently occupied by our board president, Sheila Brown, our board vice president, Cindy Hall, and Corey Clark. How do we get there? I always mention this, but you can't overstate it. Trust is a big thing. And we've been blessed to have built the trust of the community through your efforts, through the district's efforts, and all that we're doing for the community. And it's our job to keep their trust and keep things moving forward. Questions? Rock throwings? Anything? Yes.
On that first page, you have administration. What was that for?
Hold on. Sir.
On page 5.
On page 5. Let me go back to that.
Administration was 1 at 4.75%.
Yeah.
What was the difference there?
Yeah, hold on. So do you have that right open?
I do have it open.
Okay, go.
The majority of that is salary increases, and also the curriculum, director of curriculum, Erica, we've been paying some of that with federal grants, and that doesn't change. I mean, that amount never changes, so her raise, we absorb all that raise, so it's more than what you would. I think that line's always going to see more of a percentage increase based on the use of grants unless we get more funding with the grant.
Because the grants ran out.
It's not running out, but that amount never changes. So if her salary goes up, I'm just using numbers, simple numbers, 10,000, but the grant is not going to go cover any of that increase. It all goes to the general fund.
Chris, so we use, I'm seeing this right on number 10. We use all the reserves in the fund balance to help.
Well, we used the reserves and the fund balance that we had budgeted in our financial plan.
And then you have the same amount budgeted for next year.
Right now, just to note, we never have used that total amount. We've always been able to end the school year by underspending the budget and underestimating our revenues. So by the time we get audited, those numbers aren't 440 or 580. They're significantly less than that. So do you remember how much fund balance we had used last year? Or was that, or the
In the accounting piece of it, I have to show that we used it, so it draws it from that reserve. But then at the end of the year, it almost creates another level of fund balance, and then you push it back in. So our goal is, the plan is always to be able to refund these reviews that we're using it. We're using these to balance our budget, but the plan is that we have enough to replenish them. And we just- The mechanism is balance the budget.
Do you know
So we
offhand?
have,
Go ahead.
sorry, so we have the same amount proposed for next year.
Right.
Correct, we try
But
to.
then you mentioned using some of that for the bus purchase.
Well, you could. I mean, I think we're gonna end the year in a very positive direction. So I think I feel if things go well, and Zoe can correct me, but I think we're probably going to have enough to be able to do that and fund our fund balance.
And just so you know, that 440 does not include the bus reserve. The bus reserve is a separate entity because it's a separate proposition. So if we decide to use the reserve or a portion of the reserve for that purchase, it's not part of that 440 that we're using to balance the budget.
I'm just looking at the numbers, I mean, it's, if we traded 468, 600, we got 160, and you're looking at 300,000, the size of the part of either one of them, whether it's one of them. So you're saying that,
I
I
think
know it
what-
doesn't work as smooth as you have to show using the whole numbers like that, but
right.
you're saying there will be money there,
I
and then
think
we'll
that-
have money for the next year, because we got to
Right.
balance again next year.
Yeah, I believe we're gonna be in good shape. I think with the changeover to the high deductible health plan, I think that the return, we're bringing back another 811 program from BOCES into the high school this time. And I also believe that our budget is going to end well. I think the budget's gonna end well, and I think our reserves are going to end well. And I think we're gonna be in good shape.
Do you think the instruction is going to go down even a little more?
I don't know about that. It probably won't go down more than that, but I think when you're considering what raises we gave, and that it's the most significant part of our budget, that it'll be in that wheelhouse.
The benefit savings of
And the-
$3 a month.
They should. The benefits will probably go up again, 10% again, and we won't see a 10% change on that budget line again, right? Yeah, so just to be clear, the budget, it's kind of hard to explain in some ways, because at the end of the year, the budget is kind of fluid, right? So like about this time of the year is when I'm asking Zoe, what are our cost outs? So she'll cost out every budget code that she possibly can and estimate every code that she can't totally cost out. That gives me an idea of what our fund balance is probably going to be at the end of the school year. That would mean if we don't get any additional, so that would mean if we got the exact amount of state aid that we estimate. In my entire life, I've never estimated, I've always underestimated what we're going to get, right? So that gives me a good idea of what that fund balance number might be. I stick that in my back pocket, and so tomorrow what'll happen is an email goes out to the employees. This is always that time of the year where I say, now we're going to start to freeze spending for the remainder of this year, except for items that you already have a purchase order for health, welfare, safety, or COVID-related things. That's going to help us to purchase some items that we would need, materials, equipment, and supplies usually for next school year. That's also going to help us rolling into that. And then, so then when we get to like July and that audit happens, just like Zoe is saying, we have to use the money out of our reserves and our fund balance, but then it's just like a wave of money that replenishes it. And if there ever becomes a year where we're not going to be close to doing that, that's going to be a year where I'm going to say, we've got to make, there's only three ways to balance a budget. It's raise your revenues, raise your taxes, decrease expenditures, right? So we're in a position right now where for next year, we don't need to decrease those expenditures, but we've got a plan for the next 2 years in case we do, so it's kind of, it wouldn't be what you do at home, but it's how municipal budgets kind of work, because it's really until the middle of July until you really know what you have left, and the auditor picks up his pencil for the last time and says, you got this, and we say, okay, and it's usually within a couple percent of what we thought, and it ends up working out. So I hope that explains it.
Yeah.
So do you know offhand, I think to answer your question is, how much money did we put back in the reserves from last year? Do you remember offhand?
I want to say it was $800,000.
that we put
So-
back into some
So when I have to look at that, I'm with you on that, because just say you spent the 440, but we did put 800 back in reserves, so.
So haven't we've seen that on the slide before, right?
Yeah,
So maybe
yes,
we
you have.
could get,
I could give you some history of how that. has
Yeah, we
been
have,
looked for the past 4 or 5 years. How
But I'm
much
just
we've
saying, I
used,
mean,
how much we've used, no, how much, I have it, how much we've used and how much we've been able to fund. And the other thing, it gives the opportunity to, once you use it and then you have that money sitting there, you can look at what are the reserves you need to fund. What in the next 3 or 4 years, is there a reserve? Maybe we don't want to put it in the reserve we use to balance the budget, but maybe there's a reserve that we know we're going to use in the future and we want to fund that more than we have been. So that discussion happens, Jonathan, a lot of times at the audit committee meeting in May, where we're discussing about where do we want to place this? And then we bring it to the board.
Keep in mind, if there's confusion, the reserves, that doesn't mean that it's not a savings account. That 800,000 can't just be pulled out to balance your budget, like for a specific purpose. You can only use it for it. So depending on where we put those, like we put 800,000 into a transportation reserve, it can only be used to buy buses. We can't pull that out like, oh crap, we have a budget shortfall. So just want to make sure we're all on the.
Yeah, and then there is some talk right now, which hasn't really materialized yet, but there's some talk over the past maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 days about the state allowing us to raise our fund balance percent from 4% to 8% for the next 3 years. If that were to come into fruition, I'd probably give you a presentation about, like Chad's saying, about reserves. It might not hurt for me to give you a presentation on reserves anyway. There's a bunch of different buckets where you can put money. Some require board approval to take them out. Some require voter approval to take them out. Some require board approval to fund them. Some require board approval to take them out. And so that might not hurt, especially if it looks like they'll increase that fund balance percent from 4 to 8%. I'd prefer to have the money in fund balance, because when you talk about rainy days, it's like you can see the forecast, but we were fortunate, maybe even for 2 years, we were fortunate, maybe this year coming up, and maybe even the next year if we're lucky, that storm is still on the horizon, but eventually it catches up. So when we said in the beginning, we're kind of building this out through 2023, 24. I mean that. I mean, we're prepared to go to battle for whatever we got to do, and I feel good about it. The one piece I forgot, and the voice inside my head reminded me, was on slide 5, and I feel bad you have to go backwards. I apologize, my fault. On slide 5, under central services, I just want you to be aware that this budget also includes the temporary cleaners that we've been using. So we carried them over as if we're going to need them again in the fall. And if we don't, we don't. But it's also included in the budget. So I mean, I can't think of anything that we didn't include in the budget that we know about today that we might need for next year. So if we need it, it's in there. Like Ragu spaghetti sauce, it's in there.
Plus reserve, you said that's fully funded.
It's
Completing because it's ending this
I
year.
meant though.
It's 'cause it's ending, yeah.
You need to Put any more. into it.
no, we would have to have another vote to refund it. Yeah,
Which will happen
next
May.
year, which will be next May. Any other questions? Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing. For people who are watching at home, have eaten popcorn, using your air fryers. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, I'm good. Okay, we're all set for you.
I have one question. Sorry, are we don't, can I go back to that meeting, or are we?
Yeah, sure.
It's probably gonna be an unpopular question. But I mean, and I'm gonna piggyback on what John had asked. So, because this either happened years ago or it was more of a discussion years ago. So if we decided, I know we have a 5-year plan, but if we decided not to take the 440. I know you're not gonna want me to ask this question. I'm gonna bring it up. But if we decided not to take the 440, because as you said, everything is in that budget, that, and even, I mean, hopefully we don't need all the things that's in there.
Right.
And then again, we have the, I don't know if the word is surplus or whatever at the end of the year. Like, let's just say we took 240 out of that.
To balance the budget though, to do that right now, I would have to raise the tax levy too, to supplement that. It's the accounting mechanism that we have to use. I can't reduce the use of reserves without, to balance the current year budget, this budget, I would have to increase the tax.
Okay.
levy.
Okay, because I thought it was the opposite.
Or make deductions of 440 or half of that 440.
Okay. Okay,
About 163,000 is
is a
1%.
1%. Yeah, I know that. I just, yeah, no problem.
It's a
I just thought I'd ask.
mechanism to balance the budget. I look at reserves and debt services. It's how we're to come to a balanced budget,
Right.
knowing that we're going to be able to fund that and keep it rolling. And
Right.
Keep it.
No worries.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions on that?
Go above 2.57.
Right.
Correct.
Which means 64%.
Right. Do we know of any districts that are doing
I don't right now, no.
that? Okay. All right, I'm gonna bring the regular meeting to order, and if you could please stand and join me for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public access. Anybody like to speak? Can you check? Anyone on Zoom? If not, I will just let those of you know on YouTube, if you would like to make a comment, please use the chat feature, and Shireen will let us know, and there will be a second public access to the board at the end of the meeting. I need a motion to approve the agenda. I guess I'm just gonna let you know, there is going to be an executive session at the end, so that has been added to the agenda. Jeff and Corey. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. The acceptance of the minutes from the February 8th regular meeting. Are there any questions on that? If not, those will stand as submitted. The acceptance of the treasurer's report. Are there any questions on that? If not, that will stand as submitted. And that brings us to our administrator reports, and Dr. Brown has lots he'd like to share.
Yeah, so again, for people watching at home, we've been doing pretty well this winter. Just wanted to talk about, first of all, hockey, the success that we've had partnering with Geneva. We appreciate that partnership. It put some of our Whitman kids on skates there for, we feel it's the first time. Somebody on Facebook said that 20-something years ago, there was one person that played at Canandaigua, but we did some research on that, and we found that that was not a school-to-school partnership. That was just something that was done at the time. As far as we know, this was the first school-to-school partnership in our history for hockey, and that was pretty cool. Also fun to watch Carl Parsons in the pool area last weekend go up on a ladder and actually put his own record on the record wall. That was really a fun time. And it was great to see his family and meet some of his relatives, one of whom was dressed head to toe in Buffalo Bills wear, his one of his grandfathers. So that was kind of cool. Boys and girls varsity bowling, they just continue to crush it. And on the boys' side, they were actually 3 pins down heading into the end. And Don Mandrelli rolled a turkey, which is 3 strikes in a row to finish it off. So just wanted to congratulate once again, Don Mandrelli, Tim Phillips, Austin King, Nick Lloyd, Eli Mandrelli, and Alex Gayhart. They couldn't be here tonight. We didn't hear back from any of them, honestly, but they're busy. And if they want to be recognized, we certainly could do that if they're available for the April meeting, because we're going to look to recognize our girls track at that point. Other team members were Beth Clark, Alex Santee, Jack Fry, Bryce Johnson, Colton Johnson, And for the girls, they were down 30 pins going into the end, and then I was the super smart guy that somebody texted me that they won because I can't go, and of course I text that they win, which put more pressure on them. They were still bowling, and then Mrs. Brown texted me and said, "Hey, they're still bowling." So I was like, "All right," and luckily they won, so that helped me out a lot. And the competing, yeah, it's psychic, exactly. I should have played on Vegas. So the competing members of there, Kendall Davis, Kennedy Smith, Destiny Rast, Zoel Payne, Chase Bond, Leah Aaron, Michaela Baker, Emily Button, and other team members, Morgan Ellis. So congratulations to them. That's fantastic, and it's multi-years here for both teams. And then over this past weekend, we were really excited for our girls indoor track. They did really, really well. And the 4x200 relay, which I always love to watch in person, but just I'm not allowed to go this year, was the relay team of Lena Burnett, Lily Morse, Taylor Bond, and Evelyn Ekdahl. They're section champions. So that's 3 freshmen and a sophomore on that team. So that's pretty incredible for what's to come. And then Sierra Edinger, the one that always looks like I'm breaking my hips and back when she does the 1500 race walk. If you've never seen a race walk, take some Tylenol before you watch it, because the way that they have to walk without running, it just looks like it hurts. And in fact, last year she came around the one, I was there, she came around the one time and she goes, "This really hurts." And the coach said it's going to until it's over. And then she just kept going, right? So it's her second consecutive sectional championship, and we're really proud of her. I saw her in person today. I got a chance to congratulate her, so that was kind of fun. So our local libraries, and I want to be clear about this and fair to them. We have 3 local libraries, Gorham, Middlesex, and Rushville. Each of them are going to be asking for budget increases that exceed their tax caps, okay? The rationale behind their request has to do with the local towns are no longer going to be giving those libraries support. And I don't view that, and I've had this happen in previous locations. I don't always view that as a negative. It just means that those towns are trying to balance their own budgets due to COVID and everything else. And so one of the things that they do is they tell the library that they need to support themselves. And that happens to be the case for these 3 libraries. So as I would say to anybody in our community, the amount that they're asking for does exceed the cap. But if it was a normal year where that town was kind of helping them out, they wouldn't be exceeding the cap. So it's just kind of like a one-time thing. Normally what happens is a library proposition is a pass-through by a school district. You're allowed to put it in 2 places. If you are a library, you can put it on the town. If the town ever has a vote where people are going to come in and vote for something, it can go on there, or it can go on the school budget. And schools have budget votes every year where people vote. So they usually go on the school votes. So what we do as a pass-through is we'll put it in our budget brochure, but not a big presentation. Just here's the propositions that they're looking for. And then at the end of our budget hearing, I would normally give space or an open mic if they wanted to say anything or answer any questions that people might have about the library budget. So I don't want any board member to take anything as kind of a negative, but this is kind of how it works. And you haven't seen it in a while because the libraries have been funded by the towns, and they've had smaller requests in the past. So hey, how are you? Good. So we're here to reckon with your Dom? Yeah, so it's hard with your mask on. So just stepping back a second here, I want to congratulate Dom. Dom, I just told the story. You're down three pins. You roll a turkey, correct? 3 strikes in a row and bang. Anything else you want to say that was exciting about winning again?
Spent the last 6 years of my life with this school on that team, and it's a family. We've grown together and we help each other. It's just a team effort.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we couldn't be more proud of you. I appreciate it. And I know that some of your teammates maybe they want to come at the April meeting to be recognized as well, and that's fine, you know.
I
we'll-
tried to get him to come to this.
Yeah.
I was like, you have to pay, you're gonna come, right? They're like,
Yeah, there's a lot going on right now. I get it, you know? So, no, well, congratulations to you.
Phyllis made, yeah. Don't take them any. Tell them they have to come. So please take.
Otherwise, Mr. Allen.
Yeah.
So thank you, Don, appreciate it.
Congratulations,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
congratulations.
That's really great.
Okay, next I've got Mosaic Health. And I've mentioned something to you in writing. I've mentioned something to our employees in community in writing. And this Thursday, Dan Blankenberg, myself, and Michelle Roaring have a virtual tour of a couple of health clinics that are taking place in schools in the Homer area. And we're gonna go kind of check it out. So just to let you know kind of where it came from, how things are going. What'll happen is grants are made available more often than not to put health clinics, especially in rural and urban schools, because the research shows that parents in rural and urban schools have a difficult time of getting children to their appointments and that kind of thing, and that leads to absenteeism and all of that. So when this opportunity came our way, we were contacted by Mike Leary, who's the CEO of Mosaic Health down in Rushville and down the hill. And he, you know, he had mentioned the opportunity for this grant, sent us kind of the grant specs, if you will, and, you know, let us know the parameters. The parameters generally are, it's usually a 5-year grant. The district, there's no capital outlay by the district. What'll happen is in the grant, you're allowed to pay for things like if you have to get rooms ready to operate a facility, that money comes out of the grant. And so in this particular grant, it looks like between $100,000 and $150,000 will be able to be used to help to outfit whatever space we're able to find for a health clinic. This clinic would be open to students in UPK through 12th grade, and it would also be open to our students and faculty who are leasing the space behind us at FLSS, and it would be open to all of our employees as well. Because it's grant funded, it's an opportunity if a child does not have health insurance, they're to be served just as if they have health insurance. Nobody's turned away. And so we think that that's going to be a big help for us as well. And the word that I have a hard time saying behind the mask is womb. They do, the service that they provide is from womb to adult. And they are looking forward to doing full behavioral, full dental, meaning fillings, extractions. They won't do braces or orthodontics. They're not doing orthodontics, but they're doing cleanings, fillings and all that. So full service dental, they're going to have a chair, an actual stationary chair, not a movable one, not a, what do you call that? Not a one you can take in and out. It's going to be there. Yeah, thank you. And then the last thing is the health clinic piece. It's going to be more than a clinic. It's going to be a full service shop. It'll have doctors. It'll have nurses. If they run into a student or employee situation that is more acute than the staff that they have, they will have people come from down the hill up to here to serve that child or that adult. The question with grants always becomes, and you know, we've all been through this probably if you've been around education for long enough, well, what happens if the grant runs out, right? Is always the question that'll come up, and it's a very fair question. So what'll happen is this is a 5-year commitment. If what their job is to do is as they bring in, as they have children or adults that use their clinic or facility, you know, obviously they're hoping that those people are going to come back and they're going to generate their own kind of income off of insurance and everything else. They feel that they've got enough need in our community to keep it open, even without the grant. The grant is really to help get things running and all of that. So what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is you get through 5 years and it turns out that they don't want to fund it, or they get bought out by somebody who doesn't want to fund it or whatever. and you have to shut it down, and that's the worst case. The spaces go back to office spaces or whatever they were before it was a health clinic, and you move on with life. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. They're going to have hours that take place during the school day as well as after the school day, which I think is another positive. And when they talked about things in the health clinic, we don't want them, we already have a school physician. We have Dr. Ostrander. We talked about that a little bit. Dr. Ostrander handles a lot of the physicals and that kind of thing. They expect to be so busy with cases, regular cases, strep, all of that. They'll be able to administer vaccines. So we won't have students missing school because they don't have their vaccinations and all that. They think they're going to be so busy with just regular cases that it's not a competition with Dr. Ostrander for school physicals at all. It's one of those things where they said they'll do a physical. So if somebody misses their day or something like that, they would do it, but they're not in the business of doing a billion school physicals, as an example. John?
Do you have any experience with this? I know you're gonna go.
It's a little, I have experience researching it. I've tried to put a health clinic in every district I've been in and just have not been successful. One, when I was at Hammondsport, was just not a good time financially for anybody. West Genesee was too suburban and wealthy, and this seems to be one that might hit, and which would be good for us.
So during the school day, now is it something, say a child is sick during school, is that more the nurse's office?
We can negotiate that, because we actually talked about that, and I'm looking forward to finding that out on Thursday. If a lot of times what this guy said was they can go right to the clinic as long as we have the parents' permission ahead of time. Yep.
That was gonna be my next question. Can they just go right?
Yep,
there?
if they have parent permission ahead of time.
When you said bringing over during the school hours and then after school hours, so what about breaks, school breaks?
Yeah, they're gonna be open they should be open like a regular office. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you have to develop an access point for this alone? Because I can't see people coming in.
We have,
in the
yeah.
district doc, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and so Dan and I are still kind of walking the spaces, and what makes it a little difficult, not difficult, makes it a little challenging, is that we still have a capital project going on. So it's hard to envision all the space you might have available, but we're taking a look right now at some spaces, and then once we lock that in, once we figure out a space, then yeah, we would want to make it so it's pretty accessible, close to an entrance and an exit, has a parking lot, all those kinds of things. Yeah, if you can get them in, they work well. Yeah, Phyllis.
I have two questions.
Yep.
The first one, are you gonna be transporting kids from other buildings to wherever it is?
We can, and I think we should, because the way I look at it is, if I had a sick third grader, let's just say, and I can get them up here to the clinic, as opposed to mom or dad not taking them somewhere or taking 3 days, that child may be in school sooner. So I would like to do that, and that I asked specifically, and that would be part of our negotiation, whether a parent would come and transport, or whether we would use our transportation during the day and run them up with a Suburban or something like that. Yeah.
And the other one is, I know you said that you wanted to house it here at this campus. Is there any reason for that decision? Because don't we have like space that BOCES used to use, the dorm building, that's not being used for anything at all?
Yeah, well, that's coming. That wasn't for tonight's meeting, but the BOCES has indicated that they're going to want to use some of that space, probably start to use that space next year as they try to grow some programs back in and help us too. So we wouldn't have that kind of space at the Finger Lakes Elementary, so that's where they want to go, right? So, but the reason for the high school is that they find that middle school and high school students seem to have more need for clinic type things, whether it's behavioral counseling or maybe healthcare type stuff, than some of our elementary students do. Yeah. Because I asked the same question, Phyllis, because I thought to myself, what if I could carve out a spot at Valley, or what if I could do something, right?
Right.
And they said that in their research, and I'll ask the question again Thursday, but a middle school, high school seems to be the best place to locate them.
Percent, where you said you've tried each time and it was successful.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the grant's competitive in that.
It's competitive.
But this seems like a good fit. What do you think? What's your sense? What likelihood?
I'm gonna say 65 to 70% that it goes. Yeah, and the CEO down there feels the same way. Just feels strong with our location, just our location and the number of students that they already see. They feel that we've got a very good chance of being able to get it. You have to have, one of the statistics in it is, when you're writing a grant, they always talk about the N, they always talk about your denominator, right? So you have to have a minimum of 700 people that could use the facility, which to Phyllis's question is another reason why you would want to include UPK to 5 in your application, because our N gets over 700 when you include the students and all the employees. So I won't know. So again, we meet Thursday. We have a tour of the ones in Homer. There's 4 places we're gonna look at, I think, on Thursday. And then on the 22nd is the date when Mosaic has to have their first application. And just to say that they're interested, here's our 1-pager of why you should select us. And then I think it's April, towards the end of April, I think is when the actual grant application is due. So Zoe and I, and probably Erica, will be doing our heavy lift in terms of the pieces that we have to provide for the grant, probably from that March 22nd to, I can't remember, Zoe, April 16th, April 16th to that April 16th date. And that's when we're doing our heavy lift to try to see if we can do our part to help get the grant. And if we don't, we don't. But I just feel it's an opportunity. You look at our food link and you look at the different pieces that we do. There's need in the community for help and services. And I just feel strongly that this would be a great opportunity. But if we don't get it, we don't get it. But I hate to go to bed at night, no, we didn't try, and if we try and don't get it, okay. But if we didn't try and it was right there on the table, I'd have a tough time with that one, I think.
Chris,
Yes.
since there's gonna be a different conglomerate, Mosaic Health coming into our building. What's the liability piece with that? If it is a medical thing,
Yep.
they are doing dental work, they are doing, if something happened, are we liable for that, or are they taking on?
They
all
take
that?
on all that. They have
Okay.
what's called an errors and omissions policy.
Okay.
And what they'll do is we get a rider based on that policy. I asked that question last
Yeah.
week, in case something goes wrong with an extraction or something like that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and so yeah, there is some insurance that's involved. And there's also glasses keep clogging up. There's also a lease involved. And generally speaking, we'll see if we're able to get the space built the way it needs to out of the grant, then we'll see how much the grant can bear in terms of lease. And the nice thing about this grant is that it's very transparent. So they can't say they have X to spend on a lease. I'm going to know what X is on my end. So, and Zoe and I will know what X is. It's not something that they could just say that and it's Y. It can't be that. Okay. I know it's a big, it was one of those things that came up in between board meetings. It was under normal circumstances, I'd come to you at a board meeting with an idea and I'd say, hey, I think I'd like to go in the direction of doing this health clinic. Unfortunately, some of these grants work so fast that I was in or I was out from the time he made contact, and every day is a day closer to a deadline. So that's why I'm bringing it to you tonight, kind of partially cooked, as they say. Normally I bring it to you as a seed and we'd say, okay, next year we might have this opportunity. Next year was not that, as we were called. And the earliest implementation, is probably February of 2022. That's a positive because we want to get this project done, get everything back to normal, and then have a chance to convert whatever we got to do in order to start. So the earliest would be February of 22. It has to jump through some State Department of Health hurdles as well if we're approved for the partnership as well. So next, I'm going to go as fast as I can here. I'm going to be putting you to sleep. Next is the safety plan addendum, and I want to credit Erica and the group, Dan Blankenberg and the group, for their work, their continued work on the safety plan. I don't want you to go through necessarily the whole thing, but there's, so what happens, Shereen, I have too much paper on my desk. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen just real quick. Oh, no, I'm not. Let's see. I'll share my screen real quick. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So just to give you, so you don't have to go through all the pages of this. What happened was when the pandemic hit, the state wanted an addendum to the school safety plan that talked about how we were responding to the pandemic. So it's basically the pandemic addendum to the school safety plan. And, you know, I know Sheila's gone to a meeting and Corey is our representative on the safety committee. You know, you've seen firsthand the work that that committee digs in and does, right? So in this particular thing, just to cut to the chase, I'm going to help you out. We had to clarify who was essential and non-essential in terms of employees. I think everybody's essential, but they give us some parameters for that. We had to detail what work would look like in person and remote, including how we might stagger work shifts and deal with quarantines while keeping the district running. I think we've done a pretty darn good job of that over a year into it now. We had to identify how our network could support remote learning and remote work. And we had to identify how we could contact trace. This stuff sounds so old, right? Because we've been doing all this stuff for a while, but we had to identify all that stuff. And then we had to have the addendum placed on our school website for public consumption. So that's the deal. And then you have to approve it. I'll use the word hearing, Shireen, for the minutes, so that we don't have to come back and do a hearing for this again. Okay. And that's all this plan added was just the pandemic piece. It's on my screen. All right. So anyway, that was that. Are there any questions about the pandemic plan? What's that? Yes, we'll remove the word draft. Yep. Promise. And then the last thing that I have for you, unless you have questions.
You mentioned the secret thing.
Yep, and then I mentioned the secret piece, so you have that. And then probably the last thing I'm going to wait until it comes up, which is actually the smart bond. I'll go over that when we get to that spot in the agenda. It's really, you have a bunch of slides, I'll be able to explain it a lot easier than looking through all the slides. So I think that's all I have. That was it. What, only 20 minutes worth of talking. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Chris?
I have a question.
I just had one. So in light of what happened at a local school district, are we protected, prepared for any type of ransomware or cybersecurity? Do we have anything extra?
I think we're as protected as we're going to be. You know, Brenda and her crew have been working with EduTech on that. We've got a new great tech on staff, Brian, who's also been taking a look at it with us. I mean, another email came out today to apply a patch to our Microsoft server, as you know, and so we're scheduling that, the patch update. I don't think we're forgetting anything, but I think we're doing our level best. You know,
We have insurance in place.
we have insurance. Yeah, that was something we did at our lab. Was that lab? Yeah, a couple years ago, we put insurance in place for it. So I think, Chad, to answer your question, I think we're as good as we think we are, you know, and you know how an international hacker can be. If they're gonna, if they're gonna want to weigh in, they're gonna work till they find a way in. I don't think we're on a higher. I don't think they're looking at Marcus Whitman, but as you know, they shoot a billion things out trying to see what hits, and you know we're following every single protocol that the EduTech has asked us to, or suggested that we do. And I know they're getting information from the FBI and every place else to do it too. So I think we're doing as best we can with it.
I have a question from YouTube from Amanda Donovan. Would you consider putting out a parent survey to see if there's an interest in a health clinic?
That's yes. So to answer Amanda's question, that's part of the process, actually. Yes. I can't tell you when that would happen because that's gonna be part of the grant process. So I don't know. We would probably wait to see if we were approved before we would go forth with that. The response, I will say this, since we put it out to the community, the positive response has been overwhelming of people wanting it.
Any other questions, Sean?
No, that's the only question.
Okay. All right. That brings us to G, the consent agenda. And I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. I believe it is G1A to G15. Carrie and Jeff. Are there any questions about that? Would you like to speak to what you just said, Chris, or the secret thing now or no?
Well, just as I mentioned earlier, in order to have, in order
For
to be,
this.
in order to move forward, we have to do what's called a seeker. A seeker basically checks the property for anything that's a known contagion or a known, like oil or dinosaur bones or a Native American burial ground or things that can come up in a capital project. Since this is going to happen above ground on the roof of a building and also on the sides of buildings, this is the only process that we need. But there are different levels to seeker should something be found. Usually if you're digging in the ground or doing something, you do at least 2 layers of a seeker. In this case, we only need 1 for this capital outlay project.
All right, are there any additional questions on that agenda? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Sorry, I'm still scrolling. I believe that's our second public access to the board. Am I right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna-
because we-
I did
Yeah,
hit
sorry.
Smart Bond quick,
Sorry,
yep.
yes, yes.
So Smart Bond, I'm just trying to, it doesn't come up on the screen, and we're gonna blame it all on maybe Erica tonight.
Is Erica listening?
Yeah, we're gonna keep Erica away if it doesn't come up. I do wanna appreciate Brenda Lehman and the rest of our technology crew. They've done a significantly fantastic job on all of this.
And one of the pieces about the Smart Bond is as some of you were on the board back in 2015-ish, the government made available some money to do projects related to technology, and you could do them in phases. People thought there would only be one phase, and then the money would dry out. And what happened was, actually, the money didn't dry out. There actually ended up being more money added to the overall pot, not the Marcus Whitman pot, but the overall pot. And so schools had to create committees and investigate what would be the best spending of the Smart Bond money. There was certain money that there were certain things you couldn't purchase with the Smart Bond money. That list is not exhaustive, but it isn't short either, so I'll spare you the details. But in 2015, Brenda and the gang must have gotten together with a committee, and they decided that at that time, the use of interactive whiteboards and smart boards was a good idea to use with the Smart Bond money, and as well as some of the other hardware that students are using today. It's time now to be looking at the next phase of that Smart Bond. There's approximately $657,000 that remain in the Smart Bond fund. What we're asking for is for the board to approve a preliminary amount up to $400,000. We need to go through and replace smart boards again. We've got a good plan for that, and we would come to you at the
April meeting for an approval of the actual plan. But the way Smart Bond makes you jump through hoops, you have to come with this plan first, the preliminary investment plan, and then we have to have a hearing at the next meeting, and then come to you with the actual plan to approve. Brenda and I took a very close look at this, and I feel very comfortable with what she selected, how she selected, and hopefully by the time we get to April, we'll have our pencils sharpened on some actual numbers of what things cost, and we can have you approve it, and we'll stick it in the hopper to get done. That's about all there is to it. But that's easy for me to say. It's a lot of work on Brenda and her crew's part. So again, I appreciate it. That's all I got on that. So thanks. Yes.
So one thing that makes me nervous with Smart Bond is we're going through and we're getting these awesome, highly expensive touchscreen. They're going to die at some point.
Yep.
So when we don't have Smart Bond, are we making sure we have a replacement plan?
Yeah, what I'd like to do.
I just don't want to get hit with a $250,000 expense in 10 years when these all die.
Yeah, it seems to me. Yeah.
With this, over to Mid Lakes, I have actually been building these ViewSonics that are in here, so I'm excited to see that you put these in here.
Yeah.
Because with that question right there, the ViewSonics, especially when Mid Lakes went with them, the actual board itself comes 4K, but in the back side of it, there's an actual computer that all you do is pop a little button, pull it out, put the brand new computer in, and the TV's ready to go again. It's all up to date, it's all ready to go. They are amazing. They are awesome. They
And they're
are fun. The kids love them, and the option's cheaper.
Yeah, the
So,
reason why we're
very
looking at,
impressive.
yeah, the reason why we're looking at a couple different brands, and the reason why in your packet, you see option C, there's another vendor that we're gonna be taking a look at as well. We're always looking at, I always feel that the legacy cost of these things is always in the software. It's not you, the hardware, you can usually squeeze, sometimes even 10 years on the smart board if you use it correctly, right? But what happens is you're bound to the software of that interactive board, whether it's Promethean or Smart, right? Or the two that have real proprietary software packages. And so where the ViewSonic comes into play is you don't necessarily have that, right? And what we would look to do is if the smart bond money were to ever go away, I would probably suggest that we look at doing leases either through BOCES or someplace else, because until a new technology comes out, Chromebooks are here to stay. I mean, they've proven their worth, and they've proven that they're pretty durable under a lot of stress, right, in use. So until something new comes out to replace the Chromebook, they're cheap, and we can certainly afford those. So I would say with servers and with these interactive boards, who knows what interactive boards would look like in 6 years, right? 6, 8 years. But I would say I'd go to a lease purchase probably after this. But
I'm
right
totally
now,
for this, by the way. I don't mean it that way.
yeah. No, I get it.
It's a large jump that might not be there.
Yeah. And I think also, Chad, I think it's also identifying from our employees who really uses the smart board as a smart board and who uses it as a place to project something, right? And so Brenda's done a really good job with the principals of having those conversations of, okay, do you really have to replace your smart board with a smart board, or can we look at something else? And that's something that I don't think anybody did the first time around because it was all new. So we said, everybody's getting a smart board. I don't care what school you're in. Everybody's getting a smart board. And now it's time to really say, okay, what do we really want? And people have been good about it, I think. They've been good. And they said, no, I only use it for this. Okay, great. But those ViewSonics they're a good emerging technology, I would
They
say.
are, and another nice thing with that is a lot of the teachers aren't even using their laptops anymore because that's what it is. It's an actual laptop.
Right.
And they sign right into it, they use it like their laptop, they do everything they need to with it, it's all right there. And the teacher I work with, she has all the stuff ready to go in tabs up top, she just goes through her day. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Sure, we're getting a couple of demo too, so I'm kind
Yeah.
of excited
Yeah.
to see how
The
they
kids
are.
love
Yeah.
it, it's easy for the staff, for the technology staff, it's easy for them to keep up with, and
We have the ViewSonic in-house. It just came
it's
yesterday, I think.
65 inches, that's huge.
Yeah, it's 65. Yeah, there's 65 or this one might be
Oh,
75.
I think they are
70, yeah. So, yeah, so that's what we got.
Wow.
I know.
Exciting stuff if
telling
you're a
you.
tech
Telling you stuff.
They're impressive.
That's great. That's awesome. And I would think now more so not than ever that we
Right.
would use that. All right. That brings us to, I already said public access. I don't think anybody else, right? So that brings us to board member items. Nominations for BOCES board, if anyone would like to run. Get that into, I wouldn't even know where to sign it. Sue, you thinking of running?
No one wants to come back.
Yeah.
I nominate Jeff.
Yes, let's
Very
do that.
good.
Let's do that. Fort County, I know there is a general membership meeting on March 16th, obviously via Zoom. So let Shireen know or text Sue directly.
But that's the same one.
Yeah, it's the same speaker, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm gonna, they were fabulous. I am not
Great,
kidding.
but I've seen it.
Yes, but I did see it. So, but they were really good. I really have to say that. Important dates on here. We've got March 23rd is the audit committee so far. April 19th, board petitions due by 5 o'clock to Shireen.
And I also have something to add. It was just passed today that the signatures is 25. So you don't have to get all 31 on your packet. You can get up to 30.
All right. And then that date that I love every year, that 7:30 a.m. meeting, we do just need a quorum. I think we can do it. Do we have this discussion?
Do it via Zoom.
We're doing it via Zoom. This is like an aha moment, I think, because we really want to have it in person because we, I don't,
Jeff wants Phyllis.
yeah. That's Jeff's favorite meeting of the year, probably.
With us, with district office relocating, I don't have a space
Oh,
for
good
all of us.
point. We can't really have it here.
Yeah.
So we do just need 5 people. If, you know, I can be there. That's not a problem.
And we
I
can
can
chat
Zoom
at the April meeting.
3, 4, okay. So she'll send it out to everyone,
Yeah.
as long as we just have, we at least need 5 people. And then Shireen will send us out all the stuff beforehand.
Mhm.
And Jeff will have to get his own breakfast that day.
Very disappointing.
Oh, can you stand that meeting? And then April 29th, did you want to speak to that, Chris, or?
I do. Yeah, I'm just looking
Okay.
at my notes here. So April 29th is our All Staff Appreciation Day. Last year we had to cancel it due to COVID. I'm hoping this year to be able to get you in some of the buildings to be able to walk the halls a little bit and thank people for all this hard work that they're doing right now. It's just, I'm on a superintendent call once a week. I'm on a county health administrator call once a week. And I can just tell you that we're very fortunate to be here with employees who want to do their jobs and want to fill in, want to help out. But at the same time, they're all pushed to their absolute limit. And, you know, for me to have slept on Saturday till I woke up at 12:30 p.m. for the first time on Saturday of the day, I was wiped out. And if I'm wiped out, it's got to mean that, you know, everybody else is too. So I think you being able to take some time, if you're able to come to the buildings, we'll make sure we do it in a safe way. But I think coming to physically recognize people would be gigantor, I think, for morale. And I'm also working on something with Lincoln Hill. If things continue and we're able to kind of open things up a little bit, it wouldn't be the same as what we did that one fall where we had everybody, but I'd like to have some kind of little, maybe get together with our people if we can continue to have larger groups. Right now we're at 250, so they're pushing it. If we can get over 300, the state will allow over 300. Then we're in the wheelhouse of probably being able before the end of the school year, maybe picking a day and after school and inviting people just for a little bit, just to blow off some steam and, I don't know, run through the fields, do whatever, have a beverage, whatever. But we need to continue this from now to the end of the year. I just think we need to continue to support each other and take care of each other. And I really think you've always asked what you can do as a board. And I think one of the things you could really do is come in, if I can make it happen safely from the Department of Health, and just thank people in person would be awesome. So that's April 29th.
So mark your calendars. Let's do what we can do. And even if I don't know what that day is going to look like,
I don't
even
know
if it's
Yeah.
half a day, you know, for whatever, that would be it. What's that?
It's a food week day.
Oh, we'll be here
Oh, good.
anyway. So.
See?
We'll be here anyway.
I did have one thing,
Yep.
Sheila, if that's okay. And I just learned it during this meeting. We had the musical is going to get pushed out to April 7th through the 9th because the parent of our lead, we had a case of COVID take place in somebody's home. And because of that, a couple people were quarantined, just learned that. And so because of that, we're gonna push it out to a time where everybody can participate. Who's putting all the time to get to the stage. So I'll have that out in an email tomorrow to the community along with the track stuff.
Great.
Okay.
Awesome. And I have one more thing. We did receive a very nice thank you note from Corey's family. Our best to you all, Corey. So, yeah. Is there anything else for board member items? If not, we're gonna have to take 5 minutes to hang up on the Zoom. And I would like to request an executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular employee. So, quick as quick as we can. We'll do that.
Thank you. I'm gonna get off Zoom here. See everybody.
No.
Thank you for joining us.
I'll try to find a score of the girls game.